Hi folks, welcome back to the channel and thank you very much for joining me once again. You are always most welcome. Today I thought we'd have something interesting. A plane that's one of the big, meanest, wickedest fighter jets of all time. The Mig-25 Foxbat from the Soviet Union from the 60s, 70s, 80s. Now then, we are going to look at the Revell version, so it's the 1/48 scale. It's in a very massive box, by the way. Massive. It looks like a 32nd scale kit, doesn't it? Anyway, it's a big box. Now this is the RBT version, which is, and by the way, I've been doing a bit of reading up on this because I am myself building a Mig-25 from ICM, who, as it happens, are in fact the real manufacturer of this kit. It's in a Revell boxing, but it's actually made by ICM in the Ukraine. These are great words to hear. Very good news indeed. It's going to be a pretty decent kit, I would imagine. Now I'm building the 1/72nd scale smaller version, but I'm building the PD, which is the sort of original interceptor fighter, and the one that was sort of the feared by NATO in the West, and the one that you saw all the grainy photographs of in the 60s, 70s and 80s, because it was much feared, this aircraft. It was, for good reason. At the time, it was the world's first Mach 3 aircraft, an interceptor. I mean, we thought the English Electric Lightning was fast, yeah? And then we had the Mach 3 thereabouts, Mach 2.5 to 3, I can't remember the exact numbers now, but the SR-71 spy plane. And this Foxbat Mig-25 interceptor was designed specifically to intercept the SR-71. And in fact, if you look at the artwork on this kit, just to prove the point, you can actually see that's happening here. He's up there. It's a bit of a strange artwork because actually both the planes depicted are basically reconnaissance aircraft. So why are you be intercepting him with no weapons on? Yeah. And here's the blackbird in the background. You see him? Yeah, we've got a blackbird there, but I'm not quite sure what that's really all about. You see the blackbird, he's trying to get away, sneaking off in the background. But that's a bit odd, because this is the wrong version of the Mig-25 to be going up to intercept the blackbird. As I say, the one that would be going up would be the PD or some of the later versions of the interceptor. This has got the slightly longer nose with the reconnaissance cameras underneath. So it's really the Soviet Union's own version of the SR-71 aircraft role, if you like. But anyway, going back to the reasons it was feared. Mach 3, so that's 2,200 miles an hour. I mean, this is unthinkable. We thought the Lightning was fast in the UK, and it was, and it had an absolutely stunning rate of climb, 20,000 feet per minute. But this was very, very similar. I don't think it was quite as quick on the climb rate, but it just kept on climbing. And it had two huge engines, absolutely enormous engines. It just looks like a beast jet, frankly, and everyone who saw it would just look at it. I remember as a youngster, I've talked about this actually before, I had literally, no exaggeration, I had nightmares about this aircraft because I lived very close to RAF Honington in Suffolk as a child, and I was convinced that in the night I used to imagine that they would show up, and I literally woke up in a sweat with nightmares on many occasions, imagining that dozens of these were swooping down to shoot up and bomb everything in the area. It doesn't make for the best childhood, that. Anyway, the fact remains they were very feared. They were a very, very impressive plane until in 1976, I think it was, we had a chap one of their pilots, who decided to defect to the West, and on a training mission in extreme eastern Russia, he was told to return to base as part of a bit of an exercise, training sortie, and he went in the opposite direction, and he put full thrust on and went straight for Japan, and he landed on Hokkaido Island, I think it was, on the very north of the island. There's an airport there, and he landed at the airport and demanded political asylum, which he ultimately got. The guy had some personal problems. I think he was having a divorce from his wife, and he decided he'd had enough, and he decided till he didn't like the Soviet Union. He thought that everything they were doing was wrong, and he decided he wanted to become an American citizen, which ultimately I think he did. He got given asylum, and over the years he just disappeared into American society. Now that meant the Americans and the Japanese were able to crawl all over this aircraft. They did have to give it back in the end, but they did all sorts of tests on it. They disassembled it, they did metallurgy tests on it, and they looked at the engines and analysed the power of them and all this sort of thing. And this is where the invincibility of this aircraft, or the myth of its invincibility, started to unravel. Because once this happened, Americans realised that actually it wasn't a very advanced airframe, nor were the engines particularly advanced. They were just great big versions of existing engines that had been seen on other aircraft, and they were not able to sustain full afterburner for very long. The reliability was very poor, very poor indeed. A lot of these aircraft crashed because of flame outs and having engine problems on takeoff, and a lot of pilots were killed. The other problem was that it couldn't sustain the high altitude, high speed runs that it was designed for very long, because the metals were wrong. A lot of it was aluminium. Some parts, like I think around the nose, was titanium, and I think some of the edges, the leading edges, were titanium, and I think some of the tail leading edges were titanium. But most of it was steel or aluminium, which was quite disappointing and not at all what was imagined. We thought in the West it was imagined that it was all titanium aircraft and used perhaps Kevlar and carbon fibre. No, didn't you? None of that was true. It was very conventional. It was just a very good design. Aerodynamics were good, although even that, they weren't that good. If you look very carefully at the image on the front, you can actually see there are some issues straight away with this plane. Given the sort of plane it is, it's going to do Mach 3, but look how crude the aero actually is, because they've had to put strakes on the top of the wing. This is to stop stalling and the sort of lift bleed problems, whereby at high angles of attack you can get into problems where the wing will stall, and you get into vortices problems off the wing, especially at high speeds. That's going to be an issue. So, you don't see those sort of huge strakes on top of a wing. You don't really see that. It was quite common on Soviet aircraft in the 70s as well. So it wasn't the most aerodynamic wing, that's for sure. I think what they should have done, I'm not trying to be an expert on aerodynamics, I'm not. But based on other later designs, you can see that probably they should have had a bit more of a delta shape on the wing, even just a little more. I think they would have had less issues. If you think about things like the Eurofighter, it doesn't have any strakes like that on its wing, does it? So, we've moved on, but it was like, it's a bit of a short-term solution, but it looks very crude, and it spoils the look of the aircraft. But anyway, so after that, it was really sort of drafted into the other aircraft came out, like the Mig-25 came out, and they became the sort of premium interceptor in the Russian Air Force, Soviet Air Force, until the fall of the Soviet Union. And this took on this role very similar to the American plane. It became the high altitude reconnaissance spy plane, and a lot of the later iterations of the aircraft had fancy electronic systems and intelligence gathering radar and advanced camera systems for photo reconnaissance and all that kind of thing, and that's where it went. Anyway, as I say, I'm building the smaller version, so I thought, as well as doing this review, it would be fun for those of you that might be interested to see the two side by side. Now, they are slightly different versions. Nose is not quite the same, and mine's got air-to-air missiles, obviously. Is it Acrid? I always get them wrong. The Soviet missiles. They're actually up here. I'll show you in a second. But we'll have a look at this and do a review. And as we're going through it, we'll introduce the smaller scale version, just to see how accurate the two are by comparison side by side. I think that'll be very interesting. And don't forget, you can even get the version that I have. I think that Revell do that as well, and they're very cheap. This one, I'm trying to remember how much this was. I think it was about £37, £36 at the time. I think you can get them cheaper than that now, maybe £31. Lot of plane in here for the money, I can promise you. So let's take a look. So kit number 03931. It's in a lift top box, which is you can tell it's not a Revell designed box. That's more of an ICM style thing. It has got the Revell styled photos on the side, which I used to really hate, but these days they're actually okay. They seem to have got some model makers to make these kits that really do have some skill, and that wasn't the case in the past. Both Airfix and Revell were guilty of depicting their kits in such a way that you would never want to buy them. I mean, if you think 1980s Airfix, when they had this horrible photograph of a finished kit built by someone who was about 11 by the look of it, not great, not a good way to sell your product, especially when they previously had wonderful artwork as we have here. They've gone from wonderful artwork to showing this really second-rate, you know, half built kit. Just terrible, terrible. Anyway, let's have a look inside. It's got a little bit dished actually, this, but it's nice to have a lift top from Revell. It's quite a novelty, to be honest. A big improvement indeed. We've got some decals, we have got instructions, and we've got some sort of a... I was say it's a box, but it's more like a sleeve. So we've got just packing. It's just packing. So it's in like, a lot of the ICM kits come with like a box within a box, which is a nightmare to get into, but this is actually going to be easier, I think, because it's more like a, it's kind of like a box, it's just a sleeve really, so let's move that away. Bit of a puzzle wrapped in an enigma, isn't it? Is that it? No. Yeah, and we've got resealable bags, that means we can get right into this one and have a proper look. Now then, looks like we've got some extras here. Ooh, what have we got? Mig-25 Foxbat pitot tube, that looks nice. Hey, that's a master model, let's have a look at this. Now then. There we go. It looks like we've got some resin. I don't think it's the end of the all versions except PD and PDS. That'd be no good for my version. Well, mine's too small anyway. But there's several different versions there, or are they? Yeah, there's 2 different or 3 different. I don't know if you can see this. There are several different iterations if you look very carefully. You see here. There. And then we've got these little, like a radio aerial antenna on the front of it. It's very nice. Then there's a mask in there as well. And we'll put that all safely back together. So we've got a couple of extras there, haven't we? Right. Now then, decals. Let's see what the decals are like. Now, I've done a couple of ICM kits and they've been pretty decent actually. The decals have been good. A subsidiary, Revell, a subsidiary of Hobbyco Incorporated, printed in Italy. Aha! Well, I think that tells us almost certainly why they're so good then. Because that tells us that they're basically cartographed, almost 99% sure. And we've got some very simple, interesting red Soviet stars. Looks like there's 2 versions, and there's quite a few stencils. And they've done these well. They've kind of gone for a minimised carrier film. Can you see that? The carrier film is kept to a minimum, and it always makes me laugh. This the Soviet Union always starts with BBC on the tail. Wow, BBC. It's not the same as the British Broadcasting Corporation, is it? They can be a bit left-wing sometimes. I didn't realise they were Soviet. Oops, sorry. I wasn't making a political joke there. I was just saying. Anyway, we've got Revell's instructions, and then we've got lots and lots and lots of plastic, which we will get into in a minute. Oops. Let's look at the instructions first. I'll have a quick whip through these. Looks great in the model that they're showing. It looks really nicely done. It's got a rather strange pink front windscreen frame. Can you see that? I don't know if that's coming up on the camera or not. That's odd, isn't it? It's an unusual colour. I've not seen that before. Anyway, what's it going to tell us? There's no sort of technical, historic description at all, sadly. It doesn't tell us anything about the plane. I think this is one area where Revell could really step up a bit and do a bit more, because that's a bit cool. Anyway, the usual Revell basic call-outs telling people how to, how to paint them on the sprue and then cut them off. Paint them on the sprue and then cut them off? That's illegal, isn't it? I thought that had been banned years ago. somebody said to me a few weeks ago that that was against the law. I think that might have been an exaggeration, because I do it. Anyway, a lot of regular Revell colour call-outs. I don't use Revell paints anyway, so a bit of a pain actually. I mean, what we really need them to do is to give us the proper description with all the equivalents like Tamiya and Hitaka and AK and all the rest of it. But they don't do that, Vallejo as well. They don't do that, they just give you the Revell call out, but they still want you to use their product. Anyway, then you get the actual sprue trees. It's pretty weird. And they do this quite well actually, I think. They show the sprue trees nice and clear. And it shows also if items are blacked out, they black them out if they're not going to be used. So you're in no doubt what's appropriate and what's not. And then we get into the proper build. So, here we go. Stretching across. Right, so you're building basically the side of the cockpit wall up, and this looks awfully similar to the smaller kit that I'm building in terms of the way it's starting its assembly. In fact, it just looks like, and I'll show you in a second what I mean, it looks like it's just a scaled up version, although I think this came first, so the other one's a scaled down version. So you build up the cockpit rear bulkhead and then the sides, then you build up the wheel well bay that goes underneath. Then you start with your instruments and your pedals and the basis of the base of the seat. Then you build the ejection seat up itself. It's all fairly clear. I do wish they wouldn't have this sort of pale grey background though. I don't know why this is necessary, this grey, bluey grey background. It just muddles up things. It's not adding anything at all. Better contrast without that, Revell. Just get rid of that grey thing. Anyway, moves on. So you build the seat up, then you put your headrest in. Then that assembly goes into the base of the seat, and then you slam it into the side there of the actual cockpit wall. Then you build up the right starboard side, and then you bring all that in and clamp it all in together. So you then encapsulate your little cockpit with the two sides of the fuselage. Then you start on the wheel well bays. Then it looks like you're moving on to the engine intakes. Then we've got a couple of clear glass windows going in on the underside of the fuselage. Then you're putting those two bays in that you've already built. It tells you to build two of them. I think that's the difference with ICM. I'll just make a point here actually. That's interesting because on ICM's instructions, they have a habit, instead of saying build two, they actually show you to build one wing and one intake, and then they go on another page and they show you building the other wing and the other intake, and it does make it like quite a long instruction manual for not very good reason really. I think this is probably a bit more rational. It does say two times of everything, and then you jump to the fact you've got them built here. On the other one you sort of expect that's what they mean, but actually they go into literally every single step as an individual process. Not really a criticism, but makes it a bit long-winded I think. Anyway, let's go back to this. So you're then building up these areas around your bays, and then the whole of the interior structure, which is going to be these ramps for the intakes here, and you've got like a framework into which these ramps actually fit, as you can see. It's like a bulkhead that they go through. Then, oh, this is where it gets tricky, then you're going to bring this forward assembly into this central lower fuselage, and then you start building up your gear legs. Right, I'm going to make another point here. They're telling you to build all the gear legs here. I wouldn't be actually putting them in though. It tells you to put them in. No, I think that's very foolish. But trust me, based on experience, by all means build these sub-assemblies as it tells you to do. But don't actually put them in. You don't want legs when you haven't even got anything apart from a bit of nose and a bit of the underside of the fuselage. Nothing else is constructed. You do not want undercarriage legs sticking out like it shows here. That is bonkers. Just ignore that. Just dry fit everything, make sure it works, and then be aware that they need to go on. So you don't want to enclose anything that will stop them going in, but you do not want appendages of gear legs protruding in the middle of the build. Well, we're only about a third of the way in here. That's one of the last things you want to do is put the legs in. Just saying. Anyway, moving on. Here you can see we've got another one of these bulkheads that comes in here. This is for the jet pipes at the rear, and he's going to basically suspend those pipes and act like a framework as well, as you can see on this next stage. Acts like a framework which helps support both the bottom and the sides of the fuselage. Then you've got your afterburner rings coming in, section 28. 29, you've got your, sorry, there's a flame holders I should say. Then you've got your sort of afterburner rings in 29. And the actual jet pipes are in 30. There's a lot of engine stuff going on here. You've got various elements of inner rings and outer rings there. You get to stage 31, and then 32 you've got the petals for the afterburner. The actual exhaust petals themselves that open and close. Quite a lot of work to do there. Hope it's well moulded, because we don't have any issues like the F15 from Revell. Again, here you're going to do the same thing again. You've got I don't like it when they do this triple thing, because it just creates joins where you don't need it. They could have just had that one piece, I think, that could have slid on. But anyway, ICM's fit and finish is usually pretty good, so it might be okay. So then you build this finished rear tailpipe assembly that goes into its position at the back, and then acts as a bracing part at the very rear of the top coaming of the fuselage, top deck. Then you're building up your vertical stabilisers, tails, and one side and then the other. Put your rudders in and your stabiliser aero fins underneath, strakes you might call them. Then we have got a couple of little fillets that need to go in here, and then you put those tails on into position. There we go. Putting the tails in, and then it all starts to come together now, look like a Mig, doesn't it? You've got your flare chaff electronic countermeasures pack there at the back. Does it also have a parachute? It may do. It may be a parachute holder as well. I have a feeling these have a parachute holder because they come in at a fair lick of knots. Very rapid landing plane, and I think they use a parachute to slow it down. Then we've got, what's that? Oh, this is a weapons holder rail or tank holder rail, like a pylon. Quite an unusual design compared to what we have in the West. And then you bring your wing top and upper and lower halves together, and nicely this has got flaps and ailerons, so that looks really good. And then you pop those pylons in. Then you're actually putting on the wings themselves and the tail planes or horizontal stabilisers. Now, section 49 is quite interesting. This is the camera pod where all the camera lenses go. So you've got your cameras going in there. You build your nose, which is in 2 halves. Ooh, I don't like it when it's in 2 halves. I'm not keen on that. I always prefer a slide moulded one piece nose. But anyway, you've got to put 25 grams in here to make sure it doesn't become a tail sitter. Then you've got 1 or 2 little aerials and strakes and things and RF antennas. And then you have got your, looks like the gun. Is that the guns or is that the covers for the wheels? Doesn't make it abundantly clear, but it's got to be the gear covers, hasn't it? I think gear covers going in there. And then finally you've got your wheels coming in, your undercarriage system going on. So you've got wheels and tyres. You've got your front nose gear leg, gear doors, putting your wheels on, and of course they have like a mud guard, don't they, on these, Defender. And then you put the main wheels on, same with your front and but it's interesting that it seems to have a, is that the door or is that, these fenders, these mud guards seem to be on all the wheels, different designs. They all go on. We've got a couple of different options. Obviously, if you want the undercarriage down or up. Then you have a central fuel tank, which is really quite a big one, it has to be said. it's quite interesting here because you've got this very, very unusual design with this extra long tank, this ventral tank that goes down the centre, and on that you have got very, very unusual long, it's like the full length of the fuselage, so it's really, really quite a lengthy thing. Very, very slender and aerodynamic, as you can see, but it's yeah, it's sort of centred, but it's very unusual. I don't think there's any other aircraft I can think of that has such a long design that goes on and on and on as this one seems to do. But we shall see how that looks. And then you've got your windscreen glass going in, the actual front shield, coving going on, and then you're going to have to mask up. They're recommending using a clear contact adhesive, and you need to mask up this canopy because it doesn't have a lot of glass area on the Mig-25, it has to be said. You can have it open or closed, and then you've got the different types of pitot head, which we talked about with those metal ones, which are much nicer than the plastic, of course. And then finally, that's it. You've basically completed the build. So here we go, Mig-25, Russian Air Force in 1992. You can see what I mean about this, I just alluded to this very long ventral tank. Underwing drop tank, but it's very aero, and it's because this aircraft is so fast, it has to be a very unusual design of tank, and it has to sort of blend right into the bodywork at the back, and that's the idea, it's to reduce drag. Second option here, you've got Foxbat B Red 45 in 2012, still going in 2012 in the Russian Air Force. That's remarkable. So that shows that they've got good value out of these planes, they've lasted this long. But be wary because there are many, many stencils. It's not quite an F4 Phantom, but there's still a lot. Well, wow. It's quite impressive, isn't it? Now, I won't go into every detail, but when we get some of these parts out, we're going to also get out my smaller kit and just have a look at how they compare. And I think you'll be quite impressed because I think they're going to be near identical, to be honest. It'll be very interesting to see, won't it? So, where do we start? Let's start with the wings. And they come in these nice, you can tell this is not Revell. They just shove it all in their great big bags, so you can shake it all up and scratch the bejesus out of it. With these guys, everything's wrapped separately so they're not going to get scratched. So, here we go. So we've got the lower and the upper wing. So, like so. Like that. Let's bring you in to have a look at this, and then we'll get the little kit out and we can do a comparison. Just let me move a couple of items here because I think there's a problem with all the paint. I'm going to need that now. Right, here we go. Now check out the quality. Now ICM, I've got to say, have developed a reputation from nothing really to be one of the very premium ranges of kits, especially on some of their planes. Now that's really nice. Look at the very fine riveting we've got. Panel lines are really nice, they're not overdone at all, look about right. Here's one of these strakes that I mentioned, that's the small one. And the big one is about twice the depth of that. And this is what I was saying about the actual aircraft being a bit crude in some respects. And this is what the Americans discovered. You won't see strakes like that on an F-15, for example, because its aerodynamics are better. However, that's beautiful, very nicely moulded, and there's no flash or anything horrible at all. Here's the underside. There you go. And again, crisp moulding, very, very fine. No problems at all. Just, if anything, I'm not sure about this. I was going to say that maybe the panel lines are a bit underdone. They're very crisp and fine, but they almost look a bit too fine to me. But I'm sure that said, given the type of aircraft it is, they're probably designed it to have as little aerodynamic disturbance as possible. So I suspect it's accurate, to be honest. Don't think it'll be wrong. Now then, let's start and have a bit of fun. Let's just compare side by side exactly how this actually looks in comparison with the little kit that I'm building. If I can place my hand on it, it says Where did he put it? There it is. Right, okay. So let's get a wing out. That'd be a good place to start, wouldn't it? Here we go, a bag of wings. Let's see how they compare, out of interest. I'll also pull that out. I'll just pull out a couple of sprues and we'll just do the side by side. It's going to be very, very interesting, just to see how ICM manages the upscale and downscale. So, the wings. A little IKEA bag. What we got? Right. Now I've actually taped mine together, so I've actually got the top and bottom. They're not glued, they're just taped, temporary. But let's just do this little comparison and see what you think. If I can sort of get it at the same focal length for you. Here we go. Right, now then, how about that? We've got, they're an absolute duplicate, aren't they? They're a total duplicate. I've zoomed in a bit too much. Got a really good duplication there, right down to, you know, the sorry, I'm just trying to say that, yeah, they've got it absolutely dead on. That's just fantastic. They're just two scales exactly the same. The detail is identical. And this is one of the reasons I decided to go for the smaller kit, because, well, this big one is big. And I was puzzling where I was going to put one of those. It was going to be very, very challenging to find room for it. Now, on the other side, just flip it over. We'll look on the underside here. You get that? Yeah. Obviously it's got the ignore the outer bit, because obviously that's the inner wing here, but again it's absolutely nailed it. It's bob on. It's perfect. There's no difference at all. It's absolutely fabulous. Yeah, impressive. Well, that's a very good sign for starters, isn't it? So I'm actually not been able to get into my build. I announced I was doing this about 3-4 weeks ago, but I just haven't got into it for various reasons, including being distracted by other things. Like I've had a couple of short sort of days out and things, and it's just got in the way. So let's have a look at this. We've got here the clear parts. We'll pop those back in there. We'll do a little clear part comparison as well. Again, ICM bags are really good. It's not just any old bag, it's a proper decent quality bag with a resealable strip on it. It's exactly what modelers need. So on a kit like this. Just what the doctor ordered. If I get it back in there. There we go. Let's have a look at these clear parts. So this is the fuselage. I'm talking about the canopy, I should say. So this is the ICM kit 1/48 scale, and I have to say that they look wonderful. Look at that. These are the various lenses for the cameras for the underside of the nose. This is the actual canopy. You see what I mean? A lot of this is going to have to be masked off because you don't have a huge amount of actual visibility out of a Mig-25. It must be very claustrophobic in there, frankly. But there might be a little tiny bit of, ever so tiny amount of distortion in that central windscreen. But it's pretty clear, it's very, very bright looking. Let's see how it compares to the little tiny one. That'll be interesting. So this is the one I'm going to be building. See my masking out very, very soon. Let's just see how they compare again side by side. There we go. Just a fraction. Now then, that's the 1/72. It's really good. I mean, they are very, very similar. They really are. It is just scaled down. It's even got the rivets still on the small one. You can still see it has the rivets on the panel around the actual windscreen section itself. The sort of oval panel. You make those out. Yep. And then you've got this very small area to look out of. It needs to be masked off. In fact, I've got a mask that's just arrived. But they've done a brilliant job, haven't they? They've been able to sort of downscale it from the big one incredibly effectively, you know. So there you've got two sides of the same coin. It's just fantastic, really. Love it. Put that away. Put them both away carefully so we don't get any marks on them. That is impressive, I have to say. Very, very impressive. There we go. That's that one. That's my one done. And it's a nice big bag as well. So it makes it easy on this 1/48 scale kit. Bring you out so you can see what's going on. Nothing worse than looking at a green screen while I fiddle about, is there? It's not easy though, promise you. So I need as a glamorous assistant to do it all for me, really. It's not going to happen. Very nice. Now then, so that's the wing kit done. Then we have got next sprue. What have we got here? Got nose. The nose section. Oh yes, so we've got the nose, we've got the photographic underside of the nose pod, so to speak, where the reconnaissance pack is. Sorry, here we go. There's your reconnaissance pack. That's where the little lenses go for the cameras. It's like a camera pod. I think it actually drops out in the real aircraft. They can take it away with all the cameras already in it for developing the film, because obviously this was not digital. I'm sure they are today, but when it was designed it wasn't digital. So that pack fits in under the nose in this cutout here. And you can see how long the nose looks. Now on the PD, the fighter jet version, it's a little bit shorter, a little bit snubber. Not very, just a little. Still looks very slender, you know. And here we've got these very attractive, very unusual looking pylon mounting points that go on the wings. You've got little petals here for the afterburners. This is this chaff stroke possible parachute dispenser at the rear. You've got these rings here for the engine mounting and the actual jet pipes at the back. Look at the size of them. Look at them compared to my fingers, how massive they are. You can see what I was talking about this being a very big engined, crazy sort of hot rod super jet, can't you? I mean, it was very intimidating to see it arrive, this, you know. I think it turned up at the Moscow Air Show, something like 1966, 67. It must have really frightened, because I know there was a lot of people from NATO at the show, and I think they were pretty scared by it, understandably. Here are your instruments. And it's a beautiful moulding, you know. Again, look at these as part of the top deck of the fuselage. You can see all this. Sorry, it's the side deck, isn't it? The part of the side fuselage. Beautiful riveting detail. It's so fine. It's got a beautiful sort of a satiny finish on this kit as well. Very, very nice. So that can pop back in there. Okay, so that's one done. Now then, I'm just going to, as a comparison for you, I'm going to get out the smaller kit so that we can actually see how they do. Again, the two kits do compare to each other. and you'll get a bit more of a feel for it. So, which part did we just have there? That decking. I think they actually moulded this in a slightly different way. So I might not have it in front of me. Is it somewhere else? I've got sprues all over the place. Oh, yes, here it is. So that decking piece I just showed you is the side panel. Let me just show you that in the smaller scale here. That's the smaller scale version, the 172, and again, it's the same piece. It's just scaled down every way. Same rivets, same detail, identical. Very good. Anyway, let's get into the proper meat and potatoes, the kit. So, move those away. Bear with me a second. Nothing worse than having nothing to look at while I'm messing about. Here you go. That's the 72nd scale cockpit which I've just started. So give you a little bit of an idea what it's like. Then we've got the big one. So let's just zoom back for this one. Okay. Now we can do a straight comparison, I think. Between the big kit and the small kit. Oof. Now then, let's have a look at this. Let's look at these tails. Now then. Here we go. So, big kit, small kit. Zoom in so you can see. I mean, what I think you're going to conclude at the end of this is that, frankly, it doesn't matter which one you buy. They're both as good as each other. It's just about size, which size you want, you know. Yes, they are that good that they are just the same, but different size. Now then, can we see that? Look at that. First of all, let's just look at one. Let's look at the big one. Look at the detail on this. So it's got this, the built-in, the stretch actually built in. You don't have to add that on as a piece. And there's some astonishingly fine detail. Look at the surface detail here. The panel lining and little access hatches. That is remarkable. Absolutely stunning. Look at that. Wow. It really is gorgeous. And then here, we've got the exact same thing underneath. There's the big one. Zoom back ever so slightly. Big one, small one. And again, it's a complete replica. It's just a replica, but smaller. So we just zoom in a bit more for this one. See? Isn't it nice? They're really both just two peas in a pod, really. Only separated by size, no difference in quality whatsoever. We've also got some little inserts, so the other side of the tail here. This is the other side of the tail. The inside, as it were. And then on the big kit, you've got that over here. Back to this one because it's so big. Same here. So you get the picture. I won't keep on showing every single piece. I think it will get a bit confusing. And, I'm sure people really want to see the big kit. There is just one more piece I will show later, so I'll put that to one side, but I'll get rid of the small pieces. So we're not going to get bogged down with that too much. Okay. So, moving on, we've got some very, very nice wheels as well here. Look at these. That is just exquisite moulding. Look at that. Those are so nice. Excellent. You've also got your nose wheel here. And then you've got your ailerons and flaps. And then you've got some parts for the wheel wells, etc. And here we've got the sides of the cockpit in the tub where the pilot sits, various switches, etc. A lovely sprue, that, lovely sprue. Over on this sprue, zoom you out again. Here we've got the one that's got a lot of the meat potatoes, the sort of forward cockpit area. Now I just showed you my little one, you'll recall the little one here. Here's the big one without any masking tape on. But again, it's just an exact replica, it's exactly the same piece. It's just at a different scale. Yeah, look at that. They formed it in the same way, you know, they haven't changed the kit in any way. They've just upscaled it, basically. And they seem to have done it very, very well, I have to say. Then you've got various parts of the intakes, the ramp positions for the intakes are there. You've got these bulkheads that have got the sort of framework for the jet pipes to go through. And some really nice moulding, some beautiful pieces, no flash, no nonsense. Excellent workmanship there, really nice injection moulding. That is lovely, 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 lovely. Right, next one. Now this is the important one because it's got the top deck on it. Ooh, got this in a couple of boats for some reason. This is the top deck, and this is where we need to compare the two again because we have an absolute side by side here. It's going to be nice and easy to do. So if I just zoom you back a bit more. So check it out. Side by side, 72nd at the bottom, 48 scale at the top. Makes you realise how big the kit is in 48. You can see where I'm coming from, can't you? Why I was a bit reluctant, given I personally have a lack of space. So the big one, yeah, a bit of a problem. It's a lovely kit though. It's a lovely kit. But you know, look at the fine detail. Let's zoom right in and look at some of this fine stuff. Here's the big one. There's your fine detail, your panel lines toward the rear where the engines are. Here's the small one. Exactly the same. Again, same panel. There's no difference in what's actually been recorded on the surface. Obviously there's a difference in depth, so on this one you've got those little, look like little vents, don't they, round vents. On this one you've got them, but they're much, much smaller. But they're there. Yep. And then at the front, again the detail at the front, it's identical between the two scales. It's a remarkable bit of scale engineering in both kits, frankly. Anyway, we'll from that point on we'll just stick now with the big kit, and I'll zoom out a bit because we want to focus on that. But it's just worth saying again that if you are in the market for either, you don't need to get the 1/48th. The 1/72 is every bit as good, and actually I'm told, because I've not got far enough yet to tell you, but I'm told that the actual build is very similar as well. Everything about it is the same, really, the same. One or two minor issues, I believe. Minor issues around the intakes, and you've got to do a little bit of dry fitting and stuff. Don't go charging in with the glue too soon. But beautiful moulding, a fantastic rendition, you know. In fact, there's one more piece. I should have shown the underside. I think it's worth showing those two as well. Let's go in again and have a look at the small versus the large. One final piece. Look at this. This is the small and large on the underneath of the fuselage. So, again, absolutely identical. just amazing, really. You know, down to every last detail is there. It's remarkable the way they've done it, actually. Usually when people scale up a kit, it's never quite the same. When they downscale to the smaller one, they'll deliberately miss things out. But even this fine detail here, let's come right in for this. This fine detail on the central spine, there's like this little, almost like a corrugation effect here in the surface. Even that has been replicated. I don't know if you can see it. The camera's going to pick it up for us, but it's there. Just very, very fine. It's just incredible. So there you go. There's nothing lacking in the smaller kit. So I'm very pleased to say, as I am personally building this 72nd scale version, you're not the poor relation, you might be the smaller relation, but you're not the poor relation in terms of quality. There's no difference. So anybody that's thinking of watching this and fancies a Mig-25, get the small one if you don't want to. It only costs about, you can get it for about £20 as well. There's no, there's no downside really. Anyway, we'll move on. As you can see, it's got this lovely satin finish. I mentioned it earlier. It has got this, it's a really good finish for painting, I think. I think it'll take the primer and paint really nicely. No issues there. You've got all this sort of detail that is in the bay for the main gear here. The sort of corrugations, as you can see. It's very nice. Maybe they've got a bit light on the detail here with the the actual fan blades. That's probably a bit light on detail, but hey, you can't have everything. And then we're down to the last sprue, in fact, so we're almost done. I have to say that every time I touch this kit, I get quite excited. I just think it's an exceptionally well produced model kit. I know that other people have built it, just the odd issue here and there, nothing really major to worry about. But nobody really has a bad word to say about it, I have to say, not a serious bad word, and the ones I've seen finished have all looked really impressive, So, final sprue. Got another double bag here. Final sprue seems to be this incredible long, and it needs it for the reconnaissance version, this super long drop tank, fuel tank. So it's a ventral external fuel tank. Look at the size of this thing, it's absolutely huge. And it's very, very aero. It sculpts right into the bottom of the aircraft and gives minimal drag. And as you can see, it's got this, it's a very unusual design. I think it's about, what would that be? About 1,000 gallons, something like that. It's quite a lot, I think. 1,000 gallons? Is that 1,000 gallons? I think it's about 1,000 gallons. I can check that, but anyway, very, very nice. And then you've got your burner rings here, which look really, really nice. They've moulded those very crisply indeed. Then you've got your various gear legs, as you can see. It's the main gear, in fact, over there, isn't it, I think? Nope, that's the nose gear, I beg your pardon. That's the nose gear leg, and the main gear legs, that's the short ones down below, down here. And then you've just got this internal sort of bay area of the sort of roof, if you like, of the main wheel well bay. You've got your flaps here, landing flaps, and that is it, I think. That is it. Now I have to say, this one under the Revell name, I think I said before, was retailing for about 33 quid. I haven't checked it recently, but there's a lot of kit there for just over £30. It's a bit like the Foxbat 190 from Revell I mentioned, but even better because this is made by ICM. And this is a precision made, very, very finely detailed, modern, ultra modern you could say, kit. It's literally state of the art moulding, really. So, what's the verdict on this one then? Well, it's going to be interesting, I think. How do I go about rating that? I would say, I'm going to have about a week to try and put it back together again because it's, I've got the bits all over the darn place. But anyway, let's try and get these on. Get to stand up. There we go. It's not really working that well. Okay, so Foxbat RBT. What do we think of that? Given what it costs, remember it's not really Revell, it's ICM, it's the ICM RBT kit. And you're getting it probably about £4 or £5 cheaper than ICM sell it for, I think. It's a bargain kit, and you're getting such a lot for your money. This is one that is is a real gem, frankly. When I give these ratings, I don't always get it right. Sometimes I do think afterwards, well, maybe I was a bit generous or maybe I was a bit mean. But I'm always very much considering their age when they were moulded. I'm considering the price, which is one of the biggest factors, and the sort of market they're aimed at, you know. Now this is, I think it's about a 2017 tooling from memory. It may tell me, I'm going to check now, so I'll disturb it, but it's about there, 2016, 2017. There's a lot of kit there for your money. It'll build into the most beautiful aircraft, and you've got such a blank canvas to work on for finishing and weathering and all sorts of stuff you can do with it. I've got to be honest, I think it's an outstanding kit, this. I don't think I can quite give it 10 out of 10 because the instructions have got one or two foibles within them, but I think 9.5 out of 10 isn't unreasonable. There's so little not to like about it. If you're interested in the Foxbat, it's a really wicked aircraft. There's not much not to like, so I think that's it. I think it's 9.5 out of 10. Bearing how cheap it is, you know, that has got to always be a factor in the rating. It's not a lot of money. It's a huge kit with beautiful finish, you know, state-of-the-art moulding. No hesitation. 9 out of 10. Excellent kit. And that goes for the 1/72 scale one that I'm building as well. Whether I'll think that when I've built it and finished it is another matter. We shall see. Anyway, thanks very much for watching. Please give us a thumbs up, give us a like. Subscribe if you haven't already to see more similar content. And if you have done all those things, don't forget to ding the notification bell if you haven't done that, and you'll get early warning of the next video coming up. We've got some interesting ones coming in November, some quite amusing ones I think you'll enjoy, around the Telford Scale Model World weekend, which I'm not personally going to, but yeah, I think that it's a bit of an alternative. I'm going to show you some of my kits. It's a bit like the good, the bad and the ugly, but not called that this year. There will be some very good ones and there will be some very ugly ones. I think you'll find it quite amusing, and I shall wash my dirty laundry in public and you can see exactly what the problems were. Most of the problems on the bad kits are me, because I didn't do a very good job of a couple of them, and I'm going to come clean. Anyway, hope you enjoyed that. In the meantime, stay safe, look after yourselves. Thanks a lot. Really appreciated your time in watching. Thank you for joining me. Bye for now.